For her beauty, youth, and wealth, Michelle was disliked by her friends and acquaintances. The girl looked down on everyone, regardless of their status, and considered herself better than anyone in her circle, not to mention those who lived in a crowded high-rise building. The rich beauty did not hesitate to show her contempt for those who depended on her. At the same time, no one dared say a word against her, but her father was a big shot. Despite her stubborn character, Michelle had warm relationships with her parents, but sometimes even her mother and father did not understand how they managed to raise such a naughty girl. It was sometimes very difficult to get along with Michelle. If she decided on something, she would not calm down until she achieved her goals, and she didn't care if her desires could cause discomfort to someone. She did not have any true friends. She considered all the girls jealous, waiting to harm her. But by some miracle, she managed to maintain a relationship with Anita, the daughter of wealthy parents whom she met in London while studying abroad. The girls tried to stick together and continued to be friends at home. To tell the truth, it was difficult to call their relationship a friendship. Rather, it was an eternal struggle between two beautiful and well-off girls who did not know what else to do to outdo each other. The girls competed in dresses, jewelry, parties, and resorts and always stayed approximately on an equal level. However, in the end, Michelle still won. She received a marriage proposal and was preparing for the wedding. Christopher was a groom to envy, a handsome man from a wealthy family who had achieved a lot in his 27 years. Michelle sincerely loved him and could not wait for the wedding day. Anita, also surrounded by many admirers, had not yet found a worthy guy. She would also not refuse to marry a man like Christopher, but he was taken away from under her nose by the swift Michelle. It was difficult for Anita to get over her failure. Being upset, she bought herself a new sports car to comfort herself. In this situation, the girl wanted to boast to her friend, and she suggested taking Michelle to the bridal salon to buy a dress. Michelle already had 2 luxurious wedding dresses made especially for her, but she wanted to have a spare dress just in case. This was a tiny detail that needed to be completed because everything else had already been paid for, reserved, and purchased. It was decided to buy a ready-made dress at a bridal house which only a girl from the upper class could visit. The entrance was closed for mere mortals. In a cheerful mood, Michelle and Anita sat down in the new shiny car and went to the salon. As soon as Michelle, a tall brunette with big gray eyes and legs up to her ears, emerged from the fitting room in a magnificent white dress, Anita couldn't hold back. Her lips trembled, tears welled up in her eyes, and her hand reached for the glass of champagne that the salesperson politely offered her. Now it's clear why bridesmaids are offered champagne, Anita grumbled to herself, so that it won't be so bitter that they are not the ones getting married. The next dress was even better. I need to quickly finish her glass, Anita thought, and reached for the next one. She didn't keep track of how much she drank, but she knew she couldn't endure this torture of someone else's happiness without the sparkling wine. One thing pleased her: Michelle didn't choose the dress. In the end, Anita criticized her choice and said she wouldn't wear such a peasant dress from a 5-year-old collection. As they left the salon, the bride complained tearfully about the lack of normal shops in the city and didn't even notice that her friend was noticeably drunk. Anita knew she had had too much alcohol but tried to keep her composure and, without hesitation, got behind the wheel. The car started moving. Michelle kept blabbering in the passenger seat, focused on the dress failure. Anita tried to cope with her inebriation, which prevented her from driving the car. Suddenly, the steering wheel went out of control as if it had suddenly come alive and refused to obey. A sharp blow, Michelle's desperate scream, the car fell off the bridge and got into the water, carrying 2 friends with it. Anita couldn't remember how she got out of the car and landed on the shore. Her body trembled slightly, and her teeth chattered in an uneven rhythm. She was immediately noticed, offered help, and the ambulance and police were called. Coming to her senses, Anita was afraid that she would be tested for alcohol and found out that she was drunk behind the wheel. Several hours later, the car was lifted. However, Michelle was not there. Her parents were notified, and they rushed to the scene as quickly as they could. The girl's mother didn't believe Anita when she said Michelle was driving. After all, Michelle was indifferent to cars and preferred to ride and take pictures in them rather than drive. Christopher also dropped everything and rushed to the scene. The view of the car from the bottom made his heart race. "Michelle, where are you?" "Michelle," he shouted, and seeing the police, he asked, "My bride, she was in the car, what happened to her? Why are you people so calm and slow?" "Divers are looking for her," the police officer replied dryly. Judging by how serious the accident was and how deep the car sank, the girl didn't survive. "I'm sorry, but there's no hurry," the policeman replied mercilessly. He was indifferent to the grief of the wealthy groom, and even malice could be read in his eyes. Nearby, Michelle's father was hugging his weeping wife. "They're not doing anything, nothing," the woman wailed. "Calm down, dear, I've already called the right people. The entire police force and rescue team will be here soon, and those incompetent people will be kicked off the job." But the punishment these people would face didn't matter to the woman. Finding her daughter was the most important thing. The search continued for several days, but the body was never found. The parents were inconsolable. Christopher grieved deeply. The policeman considered that the girl was dead. Only the father held out hope that his daughter was alive, resisting the idea of putting her photo in a black frame at home. "No," he said, "Michelle couldn't have just died like that." "Then where is she?" cried the distraught mother. A juniper growing by the river could give her the answer. It had seen a homeless guy jump into the water and retrieve the lifeless body. The guy performed CPR, and finally, the girl started coughing. "She's alive," the guy exclaimed, and the juniper bush joyfully waved its branches in response, although it might have just been the wind. The girl took a long time to come to her senses, but the guy was patient. He put his jacket on her to keep her warm, and when she was able to stand up with his help, he led her away. Michelle stumbled along, and the guy led her on. They met several people on the way. Some looked at the homeless guy and his muddy companion with disgust. Some laughed and winked. "What happened to you? Why were you in the water?" The guy tried to find out from Michelle, but she just shook her head and muttered something unintelligible. They walked for a long time. The girl was running out of energy. The air smelled bad, and she vaguely realized that she was in a city dump. They kept going, bypassing the stinking piles of garbage. Finally, they ended up in a shack made up of everything that came to hand: old wooden doors, burlap boards, and pieces of polyethylene. There was a fire burning nearby, where sardines were being grilled. 3 stooped figures were nearby. "Here," the guy said, "meet Mermaid. I caught her in the river today, and I have to say, it's my luckiest catch." The figures straightened up and began to study their guest carefully. The girl also looked at them absent-mindedly and fearfully. She couldn't tell if what was happening to her was real or a dream. One of the presenters was an old man, and the other 2 were younger, but they were all clearly people who had been thrown to the side of life. "So, what's your mermaid's name?" the old man croaked. "I don't know, she's silent," the guy replied. The other 2 came closer and began to examine the girl. "She's pretty," one of them grinned unpleasantly. "She'll be our bride, won't she?" suggested the other, and both chuckled lustfully. "Hush, you," protested the old man. "Can't you see the girl is in trouble? What was she doing in the river? Did she fall, or did she want to harm herself?" "What, you don't know? But let's not jump to conclusions. We need to warm her up and feed her," he said, turning to Michelle's rescuer. "Here," the guy said, leading her to the fire, "get warm. Do you want to eat?" Michelle shook her head, feeling nauseous. "Do you want to drink?" Michelle shook her head again. Suddenly, the girl burst into loud sobs. "Where am I? Who are you? It stinks here. Let me out of here." Don't worry, the guy tried to calm her down. "You're safe with us. You'll rest here and then go home." However, the girl suddenly shivered, started vomiting, and passed out. The men decided to take her to the shack and figure out what to do with her. The guy who saved Michelle suddenly realized that he shouldn't have brought her here. He should have left her somewhere in a crowded place so that someone could find her and help her. Well, tomorrow is another day, and we'll decide what to do next. The next morning, Michelle woke up weak, battered, and with a painfully throbbing headache. Seeing her savior holding a cup of something hot and steaming in his hands, she instinctively recoiled from him. "I'm Kevin. Do you remember me? Yesterday I pulled you out of the river. How do you feel?" He tried to speak as gently as possible. "Bad," Michelle muttered, looking around the shack where she had spent the night. A greasy mattress, dirty dishes, a pile of plastic bottles, some rags, who knows what else. "I feel sick," Michelle moaned, crawling outside. She touched her face and head. Her face was swollen, and her head was bandaged. But the worst thing was that the girl couldn't remember who she was, where she was from, or how she ended up here. She only understood one thing: something had happened to her, and she needed to get out of here urgently. Kevin tried to talk to Michelle, but to no avail. The girl didn't want to talk to him and was afraid to admit that she didn't remember her name. Periodically, the guy had to fend off two guys from yesterday who clearly wanted to get to know the girl better. Kevin never left Michelle's side, constantly watching over her. He only left when he saw that old Donovan was beckoning him with his finger, holding a newspaper in his hands. "That's the twist of fate, that's the twist," the old man said mysteriously, pointing to the front page. Under the headline announcing the disappearance of a millionaire's daughter was a photo of Michelle. Kevin was shocked. "Well done, Donovan. I'll take her to the police and I'll get a reward," he said happily. Wait, don't rush," the old man interrupted him. "Believe it or not, I know this Michelle like the back of my hand. I didn't recognize her yesterday because she was all in the shadows and covered in dirt." "How do you know her, Donovan?" Kevin asked, surprised. "Do you really think that I've been hanging around in a dumpster all my life?" "No. Before my son made me give my apartment to him and then kicked me out onto the street, I worked and earned well. I worked as a gardener for wealthy homes and had a good reputation. I took care of the most capricious and sickly plants, and I trimmed the bushes so skillfully. Oh, if you had seen my art. But then my son kicked me out, and life went downhill." "Oh, Donovan," Kevin said, "let's get to the point. You know about the girl?" "Oh, yeah," Donovan remembered. "I worked in the house where this Thorne lived with her parents. I've never met a worse girl. She had a quarrelsome character, always finding fault with everything and everyone. She bullied all the servants, ordering them to redo things 100 times, and I got some of it too. Oh, I didn't believe in this boomerang before, but now I see it with my own eyes. It's all true. All that evil has come back to her, and we have to teach her a lesson for everyone." As he heard Donovan's story, Kevin was amazed. "Oh, come on, what do you have in mind?" he asked. The old man scratched his head. "Nothing special. Let her live here with us on the dump, experience real life, and then we'll send our princess to her palace. Apparently, she lost her memory when she fell into the river, so until she remembers, let her taste our hard life." Kevin agreed without hesitation. He hated spoiled rich kids so much. 2 years ago, a wealthy heir crashed into his car, and in that accident, Kevin's pregnant wife died. The grief-stricken young man gave away all his money, even sold all of his property just to hire good lawyers, and put the spoiled rich son behind bars. However, the rich guy had more money and good connections, and Kevin couldn't prove anything. Feeling guilty towards his deceased wife and son, he drowned his sorrows in alcohol and ended up in the city dump. Meanwhile, the rich guy continued to drive around in his brand new car and felt like the owner of the city. That's why Kevin quickly agreed to teach the princess a lesson. "Do you really not remember anything?" he asked Michelle. "Nothing," she granted. "Don't you even remember that I'm your husband?" Hearing these words, Michelle raised her head, and two of Kevin's friends burst out laughing. "Husband?" The girl was surprised. "Yes, that's right. My name is Kevin, and you're Michelle, my little Michelle, remember?" Hearing her name, the girl flinched. Yes, you're right. I'm definitely Michelle. I know everything, Kevin laughed. Yesterday, you were gathering beer bottles and cans on the beach and drinking the leftovers. No wonder you suddenly lost your balance, stumbled, and fell into the water, splash. I barely managed to pull you out. I was gathering bottles. Michelle couldn't believe her ears. Yes, and you call this a drunken hunt? There's always something tasty left on the bottom for you. Don't worry, my dear, you'll sober up soon, and we'll go gathering bottles again. These words made Michelle feel sick. She grabbed her head and stomach, sat down on the ground, and tucked her knees under her chin. This is a dream, a real dream, she repeated. However, the pungent smell around her hinted that everything was actually happening. At first, Michelle resisted everything that was happening to her. She cried and whined, but soon realized that if she didn't work, she wouldn't eat. After a couple of hungry days, she was ready to collect metal, tin cans, or search for food in terrible places. Over time, Michelle got used to this life and sincerely believed that Kevin was her husband. It should be noted that Kevin didn't live in a shack, this was his office. With the money left over from selling his apartment, he bought a dilapidated house and was constantly fixing it up. The house was in such bad shape that it would have been easier to build a new one, but Michelle was happy with it after living in the shack. She tried to bring order to the house, but everything slipped out of her hands. The girl was inexperienced as a housewife, since in her previous life, she had never held a broom, a rag, or even a paintbrush. After starting to live with Michelle, Kevin completely stopped drinking and even began to think about returning to his normal job. A damp autumn came, rain poured like a bucket, and the shack no longer saved. The younger tramps went to the village and found some work with housing, but there was no way for Donovan to go. He settled in the shack on an old mattress and slept, hugging a shaggy puppy named Alf, whom Donovan found in the garbage dump. Someone had thrown away the weak and sick puppy, and Donovan took him in. Now, the black puppy with a reddish tan thanked his savior by keeping him warm on cold evenings and frosty mornings. Learning how difficult it was for Donovan, Michelle protested, "Kevin, aren't you ashamed? Donovan is all alone, and we're living here under a roof. You have to take him in with us right away." Kevin agreed and brought the elderly man and his puppy into the house. "Here, Donovan, I've prepared a bed for you. I hope you'll be comfortable," the girl fussed. "We need to restore your documents so that you can receive your pension. You're entitled to it. We won't take anything from you, but you need warm clothes because the cold is coming soon." Donovan was so surprised that his mouth dropped open. He never expected such changes. When they were alone, he said to Kevin, "Listen, Kevin, you've gone too far. It's been a long time since you should have returned the girl to her family. You've trained her enough." "Wait, Donovan," Kevin's surprised. "Did you come up with the idea of re-educating Michelle? But I thought only a couple of weeks. And what are you doing?" "I won't give her up," Kevin said firmly. "She's my wife. I really like her." "Well, look, Kevin, they'll put you in jail for that," Donovan warned him. And a little later, Kevin's plan almost failed. He went to the city on business, and at his own risk, took Michelle with him. The girl felt uncomfortable among the well-dressed people, most of whom looked down on her. One girl in particular stared at Michelle in disbelief and then rushed to her car. Yes, it was Anita who recognized Michelle in the car. She grabbed her phone to tell Michelle's parents that she had seen their daughter, but then decided, to hell with it, let her figure it out herself. Hitting the gas, Anita sped home, frightened and at the same time pleased with her action. Michelle quickly forgot about the strange rich girl. Gradually, her life improved. Kevin took any job he could get. Donovan restored his documents he had lost at the very beginning of his life on the street. Now, he received a pension and gave part of the money to the young couple. They gradually repaired the house, which confidently turned from an ugly wreck into a pretty and cozy home, albeit modest. A year passed. Michelle made some friends, simple but very nice girls. She planted a garden on the plot with Donovan's help. The adult and large Alf proudly ran around the house, feeling responsible for guarding the house and owners. But most importantly, Michelle sincerely loved Kevin, whom she considered her husband. Over time, the guy himself began to believe in the whole story he had made up. Kevin worked in a warehouse and had progressed from a simple dispatcher to a manager. He did not plan to stop there, as this position was much lower than the one he held before, but he made useful connections. He got Michelle a job in a good cleaning company. The girl was already skilled, but in the company, she underwent additional training and proved herself to be the best, earning the trust of the best houses. Cleaning was done comprehensively, and sometimes Michelle was left alone with her task, but sometimes her partner helped her. The pay was good, but they hurried Michelle to restore her documents. The woman wanted to go to the police, but Kevin tried to dissuade her with different excuses. For now, they let her work without documents, and she took advantage of it. One day, Michelle was taken to a house where there was going to be a celebration. Seeing the house, Michelle felt something strange inside, like déjà vu. Michelle wiped surfaces, treated them with polish, but she felt that something was wrong with her. Her partner was angry with her slowness, constantly pushing her, but Michelle couldn't do anything about it. Finally, the girl went down to the hall and started cleaning up there. And suddenly, she was struck like her photograph was in a black frame on the fireplace shelf. Only Michelle looked entirely different, even her gaze was different. The girl's eyes darkened, and then she saw bright flashes of light in the room. "Yes, it's me." Unable to bear the shock, Michelle screamed. Her partner ran to her. Also, Michelle's mother came down, hearing the scream. What's going on?" she asked irritably, and then she froze. "Michelle? This is a dream, I don't believe it." The woman waved her hands, but soon came to her senses and realized that it was not a dream. She immediately called her husband, and he also came running into the room. He stopped and stood rooted to the spot, then he ran to his daughter and hugged her. "Daughter Michelle, how long we searched for you, my dear. We paid everyone we could to dig up the whole city, but we couldn't find you." Like her parents, Michelle couldn't come to her senses. Her memories were fragmentary, but she remembered who she was and recognized her parents. And she also realized that her husband, whom she loved very much, was deceiving her. She no longer wanted to talk to him, and the guy understood everything. "The main thing is not to start drinking," Donovan reassured him. "No," Kevin replied. "I won't fall into this abyss for the second time. The main thing is not to end up in jail. Now it is too late to repent, the old man. Now you need to worry about staying alive at all. These are serious people, they will avenge their daughter." The prospect scared Kevin, but he understood that he was at fault himself. Meanwhile, Christopher came to the hospital to see Michelle, who was just undergoing a routine examination. After 2 years of one, he hugged the girl for a long time and said many warm words. However, he then reported that, unfortunately, he was getting married in a few days. But Michelle was not upset. On the contrary, she was happy for Christopher. As for Anita, she was afraid to come, and Michelle knew why. She remembered seeing her by the car, then, and realized that she would never forgive her for this cowardice. Michelle initially didn't want to talk to Kevin, but then realized that she missed him. She explained to her father that Kevin was not a kidnapper, that he saved her, and that she considers him her husband. The girl was sincerely grateful to fate for such an experience that made her a completely different person. Now she will have an entirely different life. 1 month had passed, and the festive table was set in the garden. Alf was bustling around with a wide smile, trying to get everyone to taste something delicious. Donovan was distracted from the feast and was studying a plant in the flower bed. He had been taken on as a gardener and given a house on the property, eagerly awaiting the start of his duties. Michelle was whispering something sweet into Kevin's ear, and he smiled. The girl invited her new friends over, who admired her wealthy home. They were having a good time at the table. Michelle knew how to have fun in a simple and heartfelt way, without vulgarity or bad taste. They were celebrating their true wedding to Kevin. Although the parents wanted to organize a grand celebration, Michelle said she didn't need all that fuss. Suddenly, she felt sick at the table and ran to the bathroom. One of her friends, worried about her condition, followed her and found that Michelle was nauseous. The friend suggested a pregnancy test, saying, "Yeah, take it. We're planning a baby, so I have these tests lying around the house, even in bags." Michelle took the test with doubt, but when she saw 2 stripes 5 minutes later, her surprise and happiness knew no bounds. She went out to the garden and handed the test to Kevin. The girl knew that his pregnant wife had died many years ago, so she wasn't surprised to see tears in her husband's eyes. He hugged her tightly, and all the guests applauded. The happy Donovan shouted, "Happiness to the newlyweds." Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.